Yeah, just read it off and I'll point to things here.
On the surface, the
Yeah, first of
gyrate.
all, I'm going to grab my probe here. Will you hand me a wipe? Yeah. All right, so we have gyri and sulci, right? So gyrus and sulcus, those are the groove or ridges and grooves respectively, right? So a gyrus and a sulcus, all right?
Left cerebral hemisphere and the right cerebral hemisphere.
Right? So we have left and right cerebral hemispheres.
The longitudinal median fissure.
Yeah, so we have this deep fissure that separates the two cerebral hemispheres.
The cerebral lobes.
So we have a frontal lobe, right? And a
Parietal.
temporal lobe, and a parietal lobe, and an occipital lobe, right? On both right and left sides, okay?
The lateral sulcus.
Lateral sulcus. That's this deep sulcus here between the temporal lobe and the basically frontal and parietal lobe, right? That's the lateral sulcus.
The cerebellum.
Cerebellum, right? So that's our second largest region, tattooed with Swick Bio on this one. Okay.
The brainstem.
So the brain stem, recall from lecture, everything inferior to the diencephalon here, the midbrain, pons, and medulla, that's all brain stem.
The midbrain.
The midbrain, right, so that's this region right here. The cerebral aqueduct cuts through the midbrain. The midbrain has these swellings, the quadrigemina, there's 4 corpora quadrigemina, two on each side.
The pons.
The pons, right, so that's kind of this egg-shaped area right here.
And the medulla oblongata.
The medulla oblongata, that's the most inferior part of the brain stem, right?
Pituitary gland.
The pituitary gland. This model has it. There it is right there, right? Oops, I just knocked it out. Used to have it. So it sits right behind the optic chiasma, right in front of the mammillary bodies. It is suspended in life by a slender stalk that's represented by this twisty little wire here, right? So let's put it back where it belongs. It looks like a garbanzo bean, doesn't it? A chickpea. A slippery little devil. Okay, we'll do that later.
When it comes out of
The
it.
optic chiasm.
Optic chiasma, yes. So cranial nerve number 2 is the optic nerve, right? You have a left and right optic nerve, and they cross right there. That's the chiasma, the crossing point for the two nerves.
The mammillary body.
Mammillary bodies are just posterior to that.
Can you lean into
So there's 2 swellings there and there. Those are the mammillary bodies.
The pineal gland.
Pineal gland, we have to look at the brain in section to see that. That would be this thing right here. So if you follow the corpus callosum around, kind of right at the end of it is this little bumpily there, the pineal gland.
Meninges.
The meninges we can't see on this brain, but we'll see them on the sheep brains here in a minute, right?
Okay. Go to the sagittal view. Is that what you want? No?
Yeah, sure. So some of these things I've been pointing in the surface, and some we've already been seeing sagittal. Yes.
The cerebrum.
Right. So cerebrum, that's everything basically from the fornix up. That's all cerebrum, right?
The gyri and the sulci.
So we can see them again, the gyri and sulci here in section.
And the corpus callosum.
Corpus callosum, right? That's a big kind of bridge of white matter connecting the two cerebral hemispheres.
The fornix.
Fornix here also is a tract of white matter between the two hemispheres.
First lateral ventricle.
So lateral ventricles we can't really see on this model, but they're deep within the cerebral hemispheres, right? There's a septum pellucidum here that stretches between the fornix and corpus callosum. So if I could stick the probe through that, it would be entering the lateral ventricle, right? And same thing on the right side.
And the first one's on the left side?
Yes.
Septum pellucidum. We just showed the third and fourth ventricle.
So the third ventricle, right, is surrounding the diencephalon. So you notice in this model there's sort of a valley here, right? And there's a valley on the other side. When you put the two halves together, you've got this space called the third ventricle. So if on our lab practical, my point of my pointer here was a paper arrow, and I said identify the space at the tip of the pointer, that would be the third ventricle. right? The cerebral aqueduct here allows the third ventricle to communicate with the fourth ventricle, which is between the cerebellum and the brainstem.
Pineal gland.
Yeah, so we can see the pineal gland here again. There.
The thalamus.
The thalamus is a oval shaped part of the diencephalon. This little bumpily is the adhesion between the thalamus and the right and left side. And the hypothalamus is this area here below the thalamus, right, just above the optic chiasma and the mammillary body.
Cerebellum and the arbor.
Yeah, so there's the cerebellum, and this model is monochrome. It doesn't show us any color, but yeah, there's a branching tree-like network of white matter within the cerebellum. All right, so we see all that on our human brain model, right? The goal is to try to find those things on the sheep brain.